Winter is back on the menu, and I'm going to talk about it. Yeah, it means cold, it means snow, and watch out, could mean a few traffic accidents too. A big early season Arctic blast is set to enter the lower 48 pretty soon. It's going to affect a large portion of the country, bring a hard freeze fairly far to the south, and going to be bringing some white stuff along with it, folks. Welcome into the channel. Jason is my name. I'm glad you're here with me today, and we've got quite a bit to get into. We're going to take a look at this big Arctic blast that's got the whole weather world talking, and we've got to look at the longer range forecast, the Euro Weeklies to be exact, and we'll see what they're showing as we get on through the video. Take a look at your upcoming work week forecast as well, and we're going to wrap things up with space weather. We have some interesting activity on the sun. I've seen a lot of solar flare activity from a big sunspot cluster that's moved around the backside of the sun and just shot off CME after CME, and that is coming to a theater near us, and we're going to have to watch those as they rotate toward the Earth. So we're going to take a look at that here in a minute too. We're going to start right here with today's video talking about the upcoming winter blast. If you're new to the channel, friends, welcome in. My name is Jason. As I said, I've been tracking weather for over 4 decades. And on this show, in addition to giving you the weather update over the next several days, so you know what to expect, we also take a look at some of the more interesting and potentially unusual weather phenomenon that are either occurring or are set to occur, such as this big early season autumn cold front and Arctic blast that is going to affect many of us over the next week or so. And we're going to take a look at that here in a second. If you haven't yet subscribed, hit the subscribe button down below. Join the team. We're growing rapidly here. Next stop, 10,000 subscribers. Certainly appreciate all the support. Ring the bell, turn those notifications on, of course, and give the content a like if you like it. If there's anything I can be in prayer about, put it in the comments section, or if you have a question, let me know. I read all of those questions or comments and respond to every single one of them, and I'm certainly glad you are here with me today. We're going to start by taking a look at the longer range. Of course, got a couple of other things to get into today too, but right here is an interesting map. This is a temperature anomaly map. It shows you how much the temperature is above or below normal, and as you would guess, reds indicate above normal, blues and greens and purples and things of that nature indicate below normal temperatures. Now I've run this out to days 4 through 5, that is Sunday through Monday of next week. Okay, so we're a few days out from this happening, but this is one of those things that the European model spits out, and we're going to take a look at it. I'm going to run this on ahead, and look what happens as we get into Monday and into Tuesday. Boy, oh boy, oh boy, what is this? This is purples and blues. This means as much as 15 degrees below normal. That doesn't tell you a whole lot if you don't know what normal is. So here is normal. Check this out. I'm going to reorient us here so we can see the whole screen. But look at this. These are normal temperatures for the month of November. Now these get a little colder through the month, so maybe it's a little bit warmer than this. This is sort of an average for the month of November, so temperatures obviously cooled as we head toward and through winter. But up here in the pink, we're looking at 20 to 32 degrees for a daily average temperature. In the purple, that's 32 to 40, and then we get into the 40s in the blue, 50s in the green, and yellows are 60s, and then poor folks in Florida, or maybe you lucky folks in Florida, depending on your point of view, you're in the 70s as we head through the month of November. Now, back to this map again. This is our temperature anomaly map, and I have run this out to days 6 and 7. This is Monday and Tuesday of next week, and then if we keep going, we'll get into Wednesday and Thursday. But look at these temperatures here, much above normal out west, and I'm going to show you why that is in a minute. Maybe 15 degrees above to 20 degrees above in parts of the northern plains, and then later next week, 15 to 20 degrees below in parts of the southeast and up the eastern seaboard. This is a big time cold blast out of Canada, and I'm going to show you why that is the case. This is the European ensemble, so don't think that just because I find a cold map, I show you that and try to pretend like that is the game set match on the weather. We look at all the forecast, all the models here and all the ensembles, and I've looked at every single one of them, and they all agree that a big Arctic blast is coming, and this is the European ensemble mean. That is a very impressive temperature departure for about 7 days out, 6 to 7 days out. A lot of blues here showing up. greens and blues, purples and things like that. You're going to get into the 10 to 15 to 20 degree below normal range in parts of the mid-south and southeast as we head into next week. And look at this. This is a 3-run trend, and it shows you that the signal is not only there, but increasing as we get closer and closer to the event, at least the way it stands now. This is the European ensemble, again, made up of 51 members. And each member has a different little initial condition that it starts with. And if there's a lot of variance, you see a lot of wildly different runs. If you see stability across the members, that means you have good confidence that you can rely on this a little bit more. And we're seeing more and more confidence that this is going to be an impressive cold shot as we get into next week. One of the things we look at too when you have a cold shot is that is there energy to go along with it to produce precipitation? And the way we find energy is that we look at our 500 millibar energy chart, and that's what we're looking at here. That's about 3.5 miles up off the ground, and reds indicate lots of energy here. And you've got this big ridge out west. You see these big lines here? That's a big ridge. Here's the center of it right here. We do sound effects sometimes here too. There it is. There's your big ridge. Here's your trough. This is how you represent a trough. And there's actually a lot of energy in that trough, and you can see all that energy here. But it's a very big, sharp trough. Troughs and north of troughs is where you find cooler temperatures and oftentimes stormy weather out ahead of these troughs. And ridging is where you find warmer temperatures, which you saw those bright colors, those bright oranges out west underneath the core of this ridge. That's where you're finding the warm temperatures. So that's your flow pattern. Your flow is coming right north out of Canada and then back around out of the west as you around the base of that trough there. And if we take a look at this, I'll just go back. There's your 3-run trend of the trough. You see that? It's gotten sharper and sharper and more energetic. It's still positively tilted. So when I look at the trough and sort of put this in motion, this is again as we get into early next week. So nothing imminent here, but Monday morning and then Monday afternoon, this is going to blast a cold front here. There's going to be a lot of energy in this trough. And if we see all of that come together just right, we could see a few snow showers out here in the Piedmont sections of the Carolinas, even parts of Virginia, depending on exactly how this goes. Now, what determines that is there any moisture? Is there a very strong vortmax? And in this case, there is. That's what this is here, vorticity, and it's spin in the atmosphere, and it's energy, and it provides lift. And if you have any moisture present and you got cold temperatures, it can squeeze out that moisture, deliver either rain showers, or if it's cold enough, could be some snow showers. And you see this a lot of times in winter. In my gut, it's a little bit too early to start worrying about snow here in the Piedmont sections of North and South Carolina, as my gut tells me this will probably not be quite as strong or quite as deep by the time we get on in here at game time. That said, the European model is very interesting in how it's displaying this, and it's certainly good to talk about. Also note that the trough is positively tilted, meaning it's kind of tilted like this from the northeast to the southwest. If you want a big storm, you need this to go neutral back over here in the Mississippi Valley, and then by the time it gets to the East Coast, it needs to go a little bit negative. That is northwest to southeast. What that does when that happens, if it goes negative back here, it draws a lot of moisture off the Atlantic. Otherwise, if it's positive like this, it just kind of blasts through. You get a cold shot, you don't get a big storm with it, and you maybe get some snow flurries out ahead of this big energy pocket. So this is something to watch as we go on out in time. If we take a look at the actual temperatures, we talked about anomalies, but what does that mean in actual terms of temperature? So this is valid. These are highs for Monday afternoon, roughly, according to the European model itself. We're looking at highs in the 30s and 40s for a good chunk of real estate over much of the Great Lakes region and on in toward the East Coast until you get to the immediate coast and back through the Southern Appalachians. Highs in the 40s here in blue, and then 50s along the dark blue line, and then out ahead of that in the 60s. That's what we look at for Monday. Look what happens as we get into Tuesday. Overnight Monday and a Tuesday night, we're looking at lows approaching freezing or below. And then we get on it, it'll be much below freezing actually for a good portion of real estate down here in the southeast. We're going to have a hard freeze if the European comes to fruition. We're talking lows in the mid-20s out into the Piedmont sections, potentially upper 20s out there, mid-20s back toward the mountains, even some teens up and down the east coast here in the higher elevations. And so Tuesday afternoon, we're talking highs in the mid-40s. These are basically lower than the coldest averages for some spots on in wintertime, the coldest high averages. So this would be very impressive by even midwinter shots in terms of the cold departure from normal if this plays out. So that's what we're looking at for next Tuesday. So that would be the center, probably the center of the cold outbreak be around next Tuesday. Then when you get into Wednesday, things start to warm up a bit. As I said, this is blasting off, and it's just going to be a 2 or 3 day cold shot. It'll be out with warm temperatures on its heels. Here's the European model in terms of snowfall. You see that it's got some northwest snow. This is not uncommon, and I would not be surprised if we did pick up some snow in the higher elevations out here in the southern Appalachians. This energy is going to be coming in, slamming against the mountains. When you have energy and moisture hitting the mountains, it rises up over top of the mountains. You get clouds, you get precipitation, and in the lee of the mountains, it sinks. And so you get this sort of dry slot where cold rain lives. When you have these northwesterly flow events, you have this rain shadow or snow shadow where you have snow to the west, and then right in the lee of the mountains, you got sinking air. And a little lamsey-divey out here means we get nothing, and then it reforms again. You get this little area of snow out into the Piedmont of North Carolina, and that's what we see in the wintertime a lot. I feel like it's a little bit too early to see snow out here, but I'm never going to say never. We're far enough out to where it doesn't really matter. We can watch it. But if we take a look here at the reason for this, I've been talking about this big Pacific jet kind of slamming energy into the west coast of the U.S., giving you guys a lot of rain out there. Well, you see that represented here by the blue. These are the height anomalies at 500 millibars. And so you're seeing that blue here. But watch what happens. Energy comes in as we get on in toward Friday into the weekend. And then we've got energy in the flow. But look what happens. We get a bit of a break in that. We get this trough out here in the Pacific that pumps up this big ridge along the coast. And look what's going on up here. We've got ridging up in Canada. We've got ridging here in Greenland. We've got a whole bunch of ridging kind of working together here as we've got a break in this all of this Pacific jet action. And so as we roll this forward, look what happens by the time we get into early next week. A massive ridge goes up out west, and it links in all the way up here with this EPO ridge. It's up here kind of north and east of Alaska, up here in western Canada, and it allows the flow to come down out of Siberia. You get this cross-polar flow, and when you have that intruding all the way into the United States, it's a very deep pattern of northerly air, and you get this linking up with this ridge and block over in Greenland. It acts to sort of trap this in here for a little while, and so you get this massive cold air outbreak. This is how we get really, really cold air in the fall, even in wintertime. When you see our big Arctic outbreaks, you see a lot of these big ridges going way up like this, and even some blocking in Greenland. We need that when we get into the wintertime if we want to get snow in the southeast. You don't need it as much up here in the northeast, but you do in the southeast. So that's what's going on there. That's with the big Arctic blast, and so we're going to keep watching that, but it's very, very impressive looking at this point. Now, as we go through the week this week, let me roll this back just a little bit. We're out here at Tuesday. As we get on in toward tomorrow, we've got a little system working through the Great Lakes up here and more energy coming into the west. And so that system up in the Great Lakes will amplify. That means it gets a little bit stronger. It heads on into the northeast as we get on in toward Wednesday afternoon. More energy coming into the west. And with that system in the northeast, going to be blustery up there with some very, very much needed rain and some snow in the higher elevations up here in the Green and White Mountains and the Adirondacks, and of course snow in the higher elevations of the Cascades and some of the Rocky Mountains out here. And as we head on through Thursday, that system pulls out of the northeast. Very, very quiet pattern over the southern half of the country, not really looking at a lot of rain. And then another system shoots out of the west, heads right across the northern tier yet again, and winds up here along the Great Lakes producing rain. And there'll be a front out ahead of that and some cool air. That will be the initial push of cool air that starts to come into the U.S. That is going to be the leading edge of our Arctic blast that works its way into the east early next week, and more energy coming in out west. But eventually that ridge goes up and gives you guys a break, but more snow in the meantime as we head through Friday into Saturday. Here's a good representation of that cold air. So as we get on out into Tuesday and Wednesday, fairly warm across much of the country, with the exception of the northern tier and the Great Lakes, and into the northeast, you get a punch that kind of comes through as we head toward late week. That cools you down up in the mid-Atlantic and keeps us below normal up into the northeast as well, maybe even the upper parts of the southeast. Very, very warm here in the nation's midsection. And then west coast, you're staying a little bit below normal with those rounds of rain coming in. But look at this as we get on to Friday, Saturday. And then into Sunday, boom, the hammer just drops and we get all these deep purple colors. This is a different website than the other one that I showed you before. This is Tropical Tidbits. That's why the colors are purple and not green. But you get the point. It's going to be cold in the east and warm in the west. And look at this. You see all these tightly packed colors here? There's a strong front that's preceding that. It's going to be very windy as this comes through as well. And then it blasts out. We get a little bit of a return of milder air, and then another trough invades the northeast as we head on out toward next week, and another ridge goes up out west and brings you guys plenty of mild air out there. In the meantime, temperatures as we head through the work week, we're looking at temps today. We already know what temps today are. They're pretty warm. If we go out tomorrow, we've got a big white square over the Great Lakes, but trust me, it's going to be highs in the 50s up there, 40s across the northern tier. Bring this down a little bit, and then 60s and then the 70s as we get on toward the south on Wednesday. And Thursday, much of the same, just a little bit cooler up in the northeast, maybe not getting out of the 30s in spots, but some return flow back here toward the nation's midsection up through the central plains. But here comes the leading edge of that cooler air as we get on into Friday. Highs in the 20s up here in northern North Dakota and maybe even into Minnesota, not getting out of the getting above freezing for highs, but certainly going to be very, very cold and then warmer as you go across the south. That's what the temperature pattern looks like as we head on through the week. As we look at precipitation amounts, out west, folks, a lot of rain coming in here, a lot of storm system and the activity in the jet. It's going to be just plaguing you guys with rounds of clouds and rain to the tune of 2 to 3, even 4 inches of rain along the coast and some of these higher elevations out here. Some of that will be snow. I call it rain, but it's precipitation. And rain's just easier to say than precipitation. It comes out faster off the tongue. There is your rainfall, and here is your snowfall. So some of the higher elevations in the Cascades here could pick up as much as a foot or two of snow out here in the Rockies as well. So look for some snow to fall out there. As far as east goes, not looking at a ton of rain. Blue is generally a half an inch. Green is a little less than that. So anywhere from a tenth to a half up here in the Midwest and into the Ohio Valley. But even back into Kentucky, my friend in Kentucky, you're going to pick up some rain. This is through the end of the work week, so some of this will fall as we get on in toward the end of the work week, but this is for a whole week, and you're going to see rain fall in Kentucky to the tune of about a half an inch through the central portion of the state, and then of course down here in Tennessee into the south, see a little bit of rain up there too, but could see as much as an inch or two in parts of the higher elevations up here in the northeast, and some of that's going to be snow. Maybe pick up 2 to 3 inches, maybe even as much as 6 inches of snow up here in the White Mountains as well. So look out for that. And there is your snowfall over the next 2 weeks coming out of Canada. I show this because as we get later into the season, my friends, we're going to watch how the snowpack builds up to the north of us to keep an eye on how potent these pushes of cooler air out of Canada. With a deep snowpack up there, the air can't really moderate all that well, and therefore it's just going to keep its cool as it heads to the south. And look at this, over the next 2 weeks we're seeing a big time buildup of snow in Canada. That's certainly good news for a fast start to winter as we head on into December. And speaking of which, the European weeklies are out, and of course they have their eye set on a cooler than normal start to December for much of the nation here in the West, particularly and over into the mid-Atlantic as well. That's a pretty good signal out of the European weeklies as we get on out in time. And obviously this is sort of an average. This is a mean. So you're going to see, some warmer conditions and some cooler conditions. But generally on average, we're looking at potentially a cool start to the east. And other signals are showing that too. We're looking at some of the stratosphere. Don't really want to go too deep into the weeds on the stratosphere today, but in the stratosphere you get this vortex that sort of strengthens as we work through the fall and the winter months. That couples with the troposphere where we live, and oftentimes if it's a very strong, tightly wound vortex at the pole, it's going to keep all of that cold air bottled up in Canada as the jet stream sort of follows that tightly and remains to the north. But when you get a weak stratospheric vortex, and sometimes things happen at the surface to impede on the progress of the strengthening of that stratospheric vortex. And when those things happen, and some of those things are happening now, you end up with a weaker vortex that's easy to be bounced around and misshapen and weakened and moved off the pole. And when that happens, you get the jet stream where we live in the part of the atmosphere we live, that can come off the pole too and start to buckle and give you big Arctic air intrusions, big ridging in spots, and big storm systems. So there are indications that we walk into winter with a weak vortex in the stratosphere, and some of the feedback in the lower portion of the atmosphere, the troposphere, can help to continue to weaken that as we get on in toward December. That could play a role down the road deeper into winter, but at least it looks like right now some of the modeling and some of the indications are that we can look at for longer leads are showing things that lead us to believe and lead me to believe that we're going to see a faster start to winter than we normally might, particularly in the east. And here is the, just for fun, the clown map, we call it, of the European weekly forecast, snow forecast, and it goes out to a 1,104 hours. Do you think we can predict anything this accurately out of that lead? Absolutely not 100%, but it gives you an idea that the model is seeing a little bit colder conditions, and we've got a good chance of seeing some winter precipitation in the forecast as we head on in toward December for much of the country. So we'll watch that as we go on out in time. That is the weather portion of the show. Check this out. We've got a big coronal hole turning toward us from a space weather standpoint. We'll get on a different display here, but there that is, and solar wind from that will hit the Earth's magnetosphere over the coming days and will enhance solar wind. And we've also got some activity going off the surface of the sun in addition to that. Watch the coronagraph here. Watch that. Boom. Big kind of almost a halo CME. That means a sunspot or a coronal mass ejection has left the sun, and when you see it around the whole entire disk, and you just barely see it here, see how it kind of comes out, that means part of that has headed toward Earth, and that is also something that will put us in geomagnetic storm conditions potentially. And part of the problem here is we've got this big solar flare complex on the surface of the sun, 4274. This is nasty. It's been shooting off big time solar flares. And so we're going to, it's all the way around the back of the sun. It's coming around for the next couple of days. It's going to turn toward us. And if I click on it here, let's do that so I can show it to you. Look at this thing. Boy, this is big. It's gnarly. It's complex. It's got positive and negative charges all mixed together. And it's that is what you look at when you look for the potential for big solar flares. And so we're going to watch this, but we just had an X solar flare come off. It wasn't directed at Earth, and it was very quick. But if you have a big long duration solar flare, can eject a lot of plasma in your direction. And if your direction is the Earth, then you could have some pretty big problems from a geomagnetic storm standpoint. And that would mean aurora viewing, but it could also mean communications disruptions and internet disruptions and travel disruptions and things like that. No earthquake disruptions in the US today, so that's great news as well, and no volcano activity as well. That is the show for today, my friends. I hope it's been somewhat educational and somewhat interesting and entertaining, and I hope that you'll be back again tomorrow. I'll have a show out much earlier tomorrow in the day, and I'll get that out in the morning, and we'll look at what the weather holds for tomorrow, and I'll have our weather IQ question back on the menu too. But anyway, folks, exciting times ahead. Hope you are having a good, fun, safe day, and we'll look to see you back soon. Take care, everybody. Have a great day.